One night in the sweltering humidity of the Cuc Phuong National Park in northern Vietnam, a young conservationist named Thai Van Nguyen knelt in the mud with a flashlight, a radio receiver, and a small, weathered notebook. He moved the beam of light slowly across the dense underbrush. He listened for the faint, rhythmic pulse of a signal that had been leading him through the pitch-black rainforest for the previous 4 hours. And when the beep grew frantic, he stopped, lowered his flashlight, and looked at the base of a rotting tree stump. Curled into a tight, impenetrable sphere of keratin scales was the animal for the 3rd time in his fieldwork that year. What Thai was doing that night, squatting alone in a Vietnamese rainforest with second-hand tracking gear and a notebook full of hand-drawn behavioral notes, was something that had, according to the peer-reviewed literature, essentially never been done before. He was studying the biology of a species that almost no one in the world had ever successfully documented in the wild. The Sunda Pangolin is one of the strangest mammals on Earth. Adults are covered head to toe in overlapping, razor-sharp armor, made of the exact same protein as human fingernails. They have no teeth. They eat ants and termites. They have a tongue that extends longer than their own torso, designed to reach deep into insect mounds. And through most of the 20th century, despite occupying a range that stretched across Southeast Asia, they were, by any reasonable standard of professional attention, one of the most understudied mammals in the world. Nobody had systematically documented their home range sizes. Nobody knew exactly how they raised their young. The peer-reviewed literature contained a handful of anecdotal observations, a few museum specimens, and essentially nothing else. Thai was about to change that. And in the years that followed, he would build the entire modern infrastructure for the conservation of a species that most of the professional biology community had essentially, through neglect, allowed to slip toward extinction without noticing. And this is the story of a Vietnamese conservationist who chose to study an animal almost nobody in his field cared about. The rescue center he built, and the hundreds of rehabilitated pangolins currently living in protected forests owe their continued existence to the fact that a young man decided to say yes to a rescue effort that everyone else said no to. But before we get to the sanctuary, we have to deal with an uncomfortable truth about the pangolin. Because the reason nobody was studying this species was not that it was uninteresting. It was that most of the ecological community was entirely disconnected from the reality on the ground. Walk into a room of North American or European wildlife biologists in the 1990s and ask them to name the world's most trafficked mammals, and the answers would come readily. Elephants, rhinos, tigers. The pangolin frequently missed the list entirely. They occupied a category of ecological invisibility that most large vertebrates simply do not fall into. They were completely nocturnal. They avoided humans. They couldn't be kept alive in zoos because their highly specific diets made captive survival almost impossible. The population, meanwhile, was collapsing. The global pangolin population was quietly being decimated. The drivers were, in retrospect, straightforwardly modern. The forests they depended on were being cleared for agriculture, but at the same time, and largely invisibly, the animals themselves were being systematically hunted. Pangolin scales had been used in traditional medicine for centuries, and their meat was considered a high-status delicacy. The demand drove a commercial hunting effort across Southeast Asia that emptied out entire forests. Nobody was doing anything organized about any of this, which brings me to the young man in the mud with the radio receiver. Growing up near the Cuc Phuong National Park, Thai Van Nguyen witnessed the poaching firsthand. The path from witnessing local hunting to becoming a wildlife biologist leading a global conservation effort was, in the Vietnam of the early 2000s, essentially unpaved. There were no established programs for saving pangolins. But Thai found a route. He dedicated his academic career to understanding them. He tracked them through the forest, day after day, night after night. He wrote down what they ate, where they slept, and what predators they avoided. And then he did something else. In 2014, he founded the organization that would occupy the rest of his professional life, Save Vietnam's Wildlife. His argument was that if a